Hello everyone, this is a psychic prediction for November 2024. It is currently October 30th. This will be a psychic prediction about what's going to be going on, what you can expect, as well as Bitcoin, the economy, politics, that's a big one for this month, of course. Shifting timelines, I'll explain kind of what's going on with that. Energetic influences on Earth as well, all happening this month, November. So last month, of course, before October started, I made the video saying October would be the storm, so to speak, energetically. And I had been actually saying that for a good, I don't know, 3-4 months. I've been talking about how there's this buildup of energy about this storm coming for October. And we did have a literal storm, of course, as you probably are aware of, with the massive, what was it? It wasn't a tornado, but just crazy weather that happened around Florida. So this has been happening literally, and I was saying that it would be a literal thing, but also an individual thing. And I believe that on many levels, people are feeling this. Personally, I've been feeling it with many things in my life coming to an end. And also, personally, I've been dealing with my father developing cancer, and I believe he's going to pass in the next couple days, actually. So forgive me if this video is not as thorough as it usually is when I do these monthly predictions, because I just don't really have the energy and time to go into depth. I've also been putting my live one-on-one psychic readings for clients on a hold as well. I will probably start taking clients again in a couple weeks or so, but for now it's just written readings, which means I do readings, but they're written and I don't schedule them with a one-on-one interaction. But anyways, moving on to November coming up here, what I'm sensing for this month is it's kind of like a storm, but it's more like a slow storm. So it's a slower version of that energy where there's a lot of just chaos and just things ending in people's lives a lot. But it's a little bit less of that, but there's still a lot of this confusion. And I'm getting the sense that this is going to take about 3 months until around February, where people are just going to be really confused. And I think this is happening on a personal level due to so much change, but also even on a macro political level as well. I think people are going to be kind of confused what's going on politically as well. March is it's just one of those months that just shows up for me over and over. I do a lot of Bitcoin predictions and altcoin predictions on my Patreon page, and over for the last year or so that I've been doing these predictions, March has been showing up as a very pivotal month where things really shift around. So I really think that there's going to be a shift around March where people suddenly can see things more clearly again, where this kind of foggy mindedness and kind of uncertainty about what is going on exactly kind of fades away and things solidify a little more. Also, the second half of November seems to be kind of just like this stale energy is what I was picking up on it. So it seems like the first half, I don't really need to explain that. That's just because of the who's going to be the president, that's a big deal. But the second half feels like it's almost like stale. Like there's this energy that's stuck that kind of wants to budge, but it's just not budging and it's not really moving forward and it's just kind of stuck. So I think we're going to be stuck in that for a good while here. When I was meditating for this month of November coming up here, the first vision I saw was a cat playing with yarn, and this representing reality playing with the intellect. And this kind of feeds into the idea about this being kind of a confusing month and people just, it's like their brain is like a ball of yarn that's being unwound and played with by a cat. So that's just kind of the energy of what's going on. I was also seeing explosions, and these explosions, being symbolic, of course, more, not so much literal, um, are related to political corruption, is the sense that I was getting on both sides of the debate. The debate. I can't talk right now. Um, that being not just one side or the other. This is like bigger than sides. It's kind of just corruption on all sides of politics. I want to be clear about that. So I saw this image of an explosion, and there was like a cell phone in the middle of it. And I know there's the cell phones that exploded recently, but that's not what I'm talking about. This is something else. The cell phone is a symbol representing communication. And it may be a literal cell phone, or it may just represent communication. I'm not entirely sure about that. But either way, that was the vision that I had for the month. So there's going to be leaked truths, in other words. And I know I feel like I probably sound like a broken record here because I've been saying that so much lately, but it's just this phase that we're in where truth is coming out. And if you look back over the last couple years or so, you can just see how so much has come out. Like, for example, so many celebrities and people that you may have put your faith in, and even politicians, just all sorts of things have come out, and we are much more aware of a lot of the hidden corruption that was going on behind the scenes that people would call you crazy and call you a conspiracy theorist for talking about in the past. So those are coming to the light, and more of that's coming in November. I got the word counter-terrorist for some reason, and I don't know exactly what that means. I mean, I know what it means, but I don't know what the context is exactly to November, but I just thought I'd throw that out there, that that was something that came through to me. So we'll see what that may be about. Um, Moving on here, money laundering exposed was also a theme that showed up for me for November. And this looks like it's not going to be good, again, for all sides, whether left or right, but specifically world politicians, including our current president. It did not look like a good situation for him. Um, this may be a situation going on that many people are aware of, but I don't think that it's going to necessarily be completely mainstream news. It may be kind of divided where like certain news sources are reporting it and others are not, and it may seem like kind of speculative, but that was the sense that I was getting, was that not everyone's going to be aware of it, but there's going to be something about money laundering that's exposed within the US and I'll just say European countries. I don't want to be too specific here. Okay, so moving on here. Speaking of the current president still, I saw him just being kind of not totally shocked, but a little bit shocked, and the word wow came through, like he was saying wow. And I was getting the sense of there being a lot of Muslim migrants um, coming through to the US, and they're just being like way more than expected, and him having that reaction to that. It does seem that the government may be a little overwhelmed a little bit by this, but I don't see it really changing too much as far as the overall stance. I still see our current president saying we must unify, and those were the words that came through. We must unify. So not too much change there, but it's not too much change on his stance, I should say. But anyways, if you're wondering, the reason why I'm not saying his name is because I use Google to advertise my content, because I do readings and things of that nature, and I have a Patreon page, and I like people to see my content and know that they can, get readings and whatnot. So if I say certain people's names, they will not let me use their services to advertise my content. So I don't say people's names. So that's why. Anyways, November candidates. Of course, everybody's wondering who's going to win, of course. Now, it's been kind of confusing, I'm going to be honest. I haven't really said who I think is going to win because I haven't really been sure. It's been very confusing. There seems to be like different timelines playing out and like alternating between both, and like every time I look at it, it seems like it switches from one to the other. So, some things, the future is never fully set in stone. Some things are more baked into the future than other things. Ultimately, nothing is fully set in stone, but some things are like 99.99999% likely to happen, so you can kind of just be like, yeah, that's what's going to happen. But other things are kind of more in flux. And this has been, surprisingly, it seems like it would be one of those things that is not as in flux, but it has been. So I'm just going to go over the history of what showed up to me. A long time ago, I predicted who would win the last round, and I was actually seeing both candidates winning, which was really confusing and didn't make any sense because how could they both win? But now we kind of understand because, one of them kind of had a celebration and said, I win, and then the other one said, no, actually you're wrong, I actually won, and then that one actually took the throne, but the other one claimed that he'd actually won regardless. So now it kind of makes sense looking back on why I was getting the sense that both of them win. This year I'm kind of getting the opposite sense that neither of them win, and that is also confusing, but we'll see what happens in the future. Maybe this will make sense in like a couple of years or something like that. But right around, what was it, the 2020 election, right after that, I did a prediction with a client of mine who wanted me to do a reading to see what came up, and I was getting a sense that the next president would be unexpected and would confuse people, and there would be people scratching their heads in confusion. I also got the sense that this would be revolutionary and it could involve a third-party candidate. Now, I think that as timelines kind of shift, there are certain elements of a path that may hold true even if the details kind of fluctuate, if that makes any sense. And I believe that there may be some truth to this still, even though the timeline has shifted massively. And the timeline on some level is always shifting constantly. But this was more like a major timeline. If you think about it, like there's lots of little chords, and all these chords are little different options of the future. And there may be one bundle here, and then there's a big bundle here. What I'm talking about, I'm not talking about these little chords, I'm talking about the big bundle of chords that shifted from one to the other. So that was a major timeline shift, and that happened right around the time, I can't actually remember what month it was. It's on my Patreon page, I talk about it there. But anyways, it was right around the time that one of these people, I'm not allowed to mention their names, who was giving a speech and dodged a bullet somehow. It was around that time that there was a major shift in many things, and I'm not saying that this person dodged that bullet because this is destined to be the truth and the light and the future of humanity, and it was like, meant to be in that way. What I am saying instead of that actually is that there was an outcome of chaos, and like the January 6th incident where they rushed into the not the White House, but Congress or something, I don't even know, whatever it was, the building that they rushed into that they weren't supposed to. If you think that's bad, it would have been like way worse than that, and it would have caused total chaos, worse than what we've seen since like 2020 and all that chaos. So that timeline was avoided through the collective agreement of humanity, as strange as this may sound, in the future, collectively, on a subconscious level, agreeing with other beings that are, let's just say, not earthly, that are kind of watching over us on some level. And they were able to shift the timeline so that we don't go down that path of chaos and destruction and basically like a civil war type of scenario. Maybe not quite that, but similar to that. So, anyways, I still to this day am not 100% sure who I think is going to win, but I will say that overall, I wouldn't be surprised if the Democrats win at first, but then something happens and Republicans end up winning. But and then that lasts for a little while, but then something, and that would be like around like January, not so much in December, but more like at the start of the year, 2025. But then something happens and there's a new candidate even later after January. So it just seems like it's very confusing. And so I'll just leave it at that. So hope that's not disappointing, but that's kind of the sense that I'm getting. It's just kind of back and forth confusion. So 6 months ago, for this month of November, this was an important month, and I saw this month as being the month where basically the economy crashed. And this is based off of, again, what I do on Patreon with altcoins. I had done so many altcoin predictions and like compared them all, and I noticed that a lot of them seemed to go down around November. Of course, that was a while ago before a lot of the timeline shifting took place, but still, I continue to see November as being an important month where a lot of things go down. Since I've said that, there's been a lot of other people saying that as well. Other psychics, remote viewers, all that type of stuff. Just people all over the place saying it, and not only just people doing remote viewing, but even economists and people of that nature saying that as well. And it wasn't me thinking about who's gonna win as the president. That wasn't even on my radar when I was doing this. It just showed up as November. So November, I think, is going to be bad for the economy. And in the past, I'd been saying it's going to be pretty bad. But the closer we get to it, the more of a sense that I get that it's not going to be quite as bad as I was thinking. At least not so much in November, but it's going to be kind of more spread out. It's not going to be all at once in November. So moving on to Bitcoin. Well, actually, let me go ahead and talk a little bit more about that before I move on. So it seems as though it's going to go down in November towards like the economy in general, towards the end of November, and then into December as well, and then moving forward until around March or so. It may take that long before things really start to take off again. Okay, so now let me go ahead and move on to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has been doing very well, actually. a little bit better than I was expecting, to be honest. I had previously on my Patreon said it was gonna go up, which it did, and then come down, and then I said it was gonna come up a little bit, but maybe not as high. But it did come up and actually go up a little bit higher than I anticipated. So that did happen. But what I'm seeing from here, and what I've been seeing and saying on my Patreon in the past as well, is that I don't see it going up much higher from now, but mid-month of November, there could actually be a new high. It could actually go a little higher. So there could be lots of volatility and some spike, some upward movement in the middle of November. That seems very good. But the end of the month, by the end of the month, it looks like it will start coming down with lots of volatility until January, where it could go pretty low, potentially, into, actually, sorry, not just January, but all the way until April of 2025. It seems as though it could get lower even towards the end of that time, potentially even going as low as 43K, which would be pretty low. I don't see it staying at that level. This is like an if it goes that low type of scenario where it would just barely come down and hit it and bounce right back up. So, I don't think it's going to be stuck at that level for very long if it does go down that low. But the second half of 2025 for Bitcoin does look much better. And then 2026, it looks like Bitcoin really starts to take off more. And 2027, it looks like it starts off great and it's a really positive year, and then it collapses and it goes down a bunch, and that looks like a dangerous time for Bitcoin. So anyways, I do way more detailed predictions for Bitcoin and hundreds of crypto coins, and I get way into the details, and I talk more about the timelines and all that on my Patreon page. You can check that out if you want more of that content. There is a free 1-week trial if you want to sign up for free, and then you can cancel at the end of the week with literally clicking two clicks, or maybe 2 or 3. I think you may have to click cancel OK or something like that, but it's very easy to cancel before you get charged. And if you do sign up, and if you do want to continue on the Patreon, there is a lower tier as low as $5 a month. So just something to consider. Anyways, November is a very pivotal month of things shifting. As you may have felt in your own life, possibly for October already, you may be feeling that already. That's kind of what I was saying in my previous psychic prediction video, that's going to be the case, and it's going to continue. So, with that in mind, what is the month good for? And when I asked, what is November good for, the answer I got was an image of a flame, like just fire. And I got the sense that this is the fire from within. And this is kind of like your own passion and drive and, using your will. And you could almost say it's kind of selfish on some level. Some months are better for the group dynamic. November seems like it's much better for the individualistic dynamic, if you want to call it that. So this is a good month coming up here for pushing for change within your own life. And that's a really big theme for November. And there's a lot of change happening on a personal level as well as on a macro level. So I also saw a vision of a ladder and someone climbing this ladder, representing November is a great month to climb the ladder to the top to get to where you want to be. In other words, be ambitious. It's a good month for that type of energy. You will be rewarded by having more of that type of behavior in November than most other months on average, I would say. Um, this is kind of a, take this one with a grain of salt, I guess, but aggression. So action and aggression over your personal goals. So by aggression, I don't mean overreacting or being violent. What I mean is aggressively going after what you want in life. And again, feeding your individual passions, maybe more so than the collective. At least this month kind of seems to resonate more with that, I would say. Okay, so what is this month bad for? And to kind of balance out what I just said, the first thing that came up was hostility. So again, going overboard, being hostile, obviously not good. Also coldness, and I don't mean temperature, although it may be cold, but I mean coldness as in being a cold person, like having a cold heart. Also, it's not a good month for trying to be too responsible. Or trying to be too responsible is not a good thing because you're supposed to break the mold. And I think I said this last month too, but it also is showing up for November. It's kind of like a continuation of the storm, you could say, November, but it's sort of more calm, I guess you could say. But yes, you're breaking the mold, and so if you're trying to be too responsible, you're not going to allow yourself to break the mold. So don't be too responsible to the point where you're not allowing yourself to kind of free flow a little bit and break the old patterns. Don't be so stuck in those old patterns trying to be too responsible. So also yelling at others rather than focusing on shifting your own life is not a good idea. So don't yell at other people. Instead, focus on shifting your own life. And I think that could have a lot to do with the politics. That may be why that's showing up. But I also think that it's showing up, regardless of politics, just the energy of November in general. Specifically this year of November. I mean, there may be certain cycles where certain months tend to have certain types of energy throughout the year, but this is something different. 2024, I mean, this is a big year. 2025 is going to be big too, and 2026 is going to be like, 2024 is kind of like the slow starting to break things down, things kind of falling apart. 2025 is kind of like what's going on, or kind of like turning things. Some things are going to the bottom, some things are coming up. Lots of just change. 2026 is where we start to build back again, and I don't mean the build back better political thing. There may be some of that trying to influence what's happening, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is we're actually building back from a more authentic place, and society is starting to improve in massive ways, despite the attempt to control it from the top down, which will be happening simultaneously, but overall the process will be an authentic process of building back. Okay, so the advice for November is be true to yourself over others. And yes, that sounds selfish, and I don't mean you should be a selfish prick. Don't be an asshole, that's not what I mean. But sometimes you can put the group above yourself, and that's not a good thing for this month. This month is kind of, I feel like the lesson of the month is to not do that, or to learn how to not do that all the time, I guess. So let's see here. For the advice I wrote, while we pivot our lives, it is important to not fall into the trap of doing what others want and instead follow your own passion. This is an opportunity to realign yourself in the direction that you want. So make it count for yourself. So starting March 2025, again, that month, March, that pivotal month that just seems to be where a lot of things shift energetically. Um, Starting around there, the direction that you have chosen, which right now is kind of in limbo, and you have this opportunity to really reanalyze the direction you're heading, pick and choose what you want in your life. But by March, the direction will become more solidified again. It's kind of like the trains are going and they kind of stop, and you have an option like, which train do I want to get on? And you get on this train, well, then they kind of start moving and you're kind of stuck on that train again, if that makes sense. That's maybe not the perfect metaphor, but that's just the metaphor that came to my mind. Nothing's really stopping, but you know what I mean. So, anyways, that's it for November. I do want to mention though, on my Patreon page, I actually do remote viewing. I didn't really realize this, but I actually took a little mini remote viewing class recently, just because I'd never done that before. And I always thought that to be remote viewing, needed to be viewer blind, which means, well, in remote viewing you write VB to mean viewer blind. But in some cases, you can write, I think, PB at the top of the paper, meaning partially blind. And I realized that's what I do. So technically, what I do is, for certain people of importance in the world, um, political figures and people that deserve to be investigated, and it's inappropriate to investigate everyone all the time, totally an invasion of privacy, but sometimes it's important and you just need to know. And so for that reason, I do remote viewing where I take a whole bunch of these people's names that are big players in the world, and I put their name next to a 6-digit number that I randomly generate with AI, and I connect it in a big folder that I don't look at ever, and then I randomly pick one of those numbers and I do a blind reading on that number. It's not entirely blind because I do know that it's a person. I know that I'm reading a human being. Therefore, it's not a blind reading in the sense that it's viewer blind. It's partially blind because I know it's a person, but I have no idea who I'm reading. And that really helps me discover a lot of information that, sometimes your mind will preconceive ideas or see things in a certain light. But when you don't have that preconception, or you don't have that light or that certain angle of looking at it, you may find more information, or you may find that your assumptions were off. So that's why I use that technique, and I've learned a lot myself doing that technique. And it's been probably one of the most beneficial things I've learned from doing psychic readings is my blind readings in that style. Now, I kind of suck at remote viewing in the traditional sense. There's just all these different ways, like you're supposed to like draw a line and have the line kind of tell you if it's a structure or a person or whatever. I suck at that. But this method works for me. So, it's not traditional remote viewing, but you could kind of say that on some level it kind of is. So, anyways, on my Patreon page, I do that with people. I also talk about altcoin predictions, tons of altcoins, and of course I talk about what's really going on in the world behind politics. So if you'd like to join, you can join for 1 week for free. The link will be in the description below this video, so you can check that out. And soon enough, I will be doing readings for clients again, but at the moment I am on hold for that. But if you would like a written reading, you can ask me a question in an email or text of some sort, and I will type up about 3 paragraphs, or two to 3 paragraphs or so, as a response to your question. I think that's all I have to say, so If you watch this video all the way to the end, I always appreciate a thumbs up. Thank you very much. And feel free to leave a comment. It always helps with the algorithm. And I'd like to hear from you guys as well. And subscribe for monthly predictions every month before the month if you have not yet. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.